Hey folks, Sylvius here. I'm on FDR. We are in Theiss at the Troll Cave. This will be the first of a mini series for FDR. FDR will still continue through with his normal videos, which are for the most part like a mix of talking about whatever. You guys know how they work. But this is a mini series that I'm referring to as Talking Trump, which will focus specifically on the happenings of the Donald Trump presidency. Okay. So, at least I am lagging somewhat. I will at least have 4 years of content from Donald Trump. So, here we are. Now, Donald Trump is not president yet. It is 3:21 a.m. on the 10th. He gets sworn in on the 20th. The Electoral College has voted. He has gotten his stuff. We have President Donald Trump, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So let's move on. Because like I said, there's nothing we can do about it. We have a President Donald Trump. Alright, so in keeping with the spirit of my other political videos where this won't be just me being like, Donald Trump is terrible, so are Republicans, they're all awful. This is not the purpose of these videos. It is to inform both sides. It is advice for Democrats, at least in this case, and for Republicans, think of it like getting the opposing team's playbook. At the very least, at the absolute very least, by listening to me, you'll have an understanding of how you can more effectively beat us. At best, I'll make you think about things that you haven't thought of before, and you'll see things in a different light, and maybe it'll change your perspective. So, alright, for my first Talking Trump inauguration video, I want to stick to the topic of how do we proceed from here on, okay? Jill Stein's recount attempts are done. The Electoral College voted. He's our president. So now, Democrats, we have essentially a choice here between one of two things, and I don't really think we have any other. There's no third option or anything like that, okay? We've got two choices. On one hand, we can do what is the morally correct thing. What every non-winning party in American politics has done since the beginning of time. We can work with our president. There we go, I'm lagging again. We can work with our president. He was elected. While he didn't win the popular vote, he got the Electoral College vote. As Republicans will be happy to tell you, yeah, there we go. Basically, all the votes that he got that weren't part of the Electoral College ones came from basically two states, California and, for the most part, New York. So, while he did technically lose the popular vote, he kind of only barely lost the popular vote. And any kind of nonsense about there being 3 million illegals is just nonsense. Let's move on. Yes, he didn't win the popular vote, but he lost it in two of the most populous states that went pure against him, which is kind of specifically the reason why the Electoral College does exist. At least one of the reasons why it exists is so that the most populous states don't dictate to the other states. Same reason why every state has 2 senators, to make sure every state has its own share of, voting ability, whatever. So, this is one of those things where I'm going to kind of touch on this topic in this video, but, he won, we need to move on. Republicans, you're not helping your argument by claiming that he only lost due to illegal voting. or illegal immigrants voting or other types of voter fraud. He won. We concede that point. Some of us are still bitter, but you're just making yourselves look foolish by going, well, he would have won the popular vote also, which is regrettable because he himself has specifically said that, but it's time to move on. Let's drop this topic, okay? But anyway, so back to what I was saying. We have, we can choose to do what every political party has done after they lost the election, which is work with the president. Except one. One notable group didn't do that, but I'll get to that also. But yeah, we'll work with them. And this is in our own best interest, too, because if we don't work with him, then Republicans and Donald Trump will do whatever they want. By working with them, we can compromise. We can, and we need to do this because we don't have a choice, but we need to look at all the things that are important to us and then determine which ones are the most important. I know this is painful and this isn't something that Democrats are particularly good at, but this is a battle. It's like a war, and sometimes the overall strategy is served by sacrificing on a certain battlefront. You can't win every battle. If you try to win every battle, you run yourself ragged and then you lose. Sometimes you need to go, look, those men over there, they need to hold their ground even though they're all going to die. So we need to decide what's most important to us. And I'm not actually sure what's most important to us. I mean, I personally know what's most important to me. I know what's not important to me. I did a video on abortion. I think abortion is a right and it should be kept that way. I think it's shameful how a lot of states have gone beyond what the Supreme Court has said and have tried to curtail abortion under the guise of being like, oh, it's for medical concerns and stuff like that. I mean, realistically, they're just trying to find another way to attack abortion, which, if they said that outright, I could at least respect them for what they're doing. Whereas, since they try to hide it, I don't really have a lot of respect for them. But abortion, to me, is like a really important topic. On the other hand, things like criminal justice reform are kind of not. Legalizing marijuana is not one of my go-to things. Other people are going to have a different view on it, but we as a group need to decide on what's actually important, and we are going to need to let some of those things go. We're going to have to concede a lot of battles here, because we lost the election. We lost the main battle, and at this point, what we need to do is we need to mitigate our losses, reduce the damage as much as possible. So, gay marriage, abortion, healthcare, the environment, criminal justice reform, marijuana legalization. We need to look at all these different things and decide which ones are most important, and then focus on them, compromise on the other one. We need to go to Republicans and go, look, we'll help you repeal Obamacare, we'll help you craft a replacement, but don't cut food stamps. Don't cut unemployment. We'll give up on trying to raise the minimum wage. We'll give up on that. But don't lower taxes on the ultra-wealthy as much. We'll give up on abortion and we'll give up on gay marriage, but let's keep the environmental protection things we have going. That's what we need to do. And by working with him, we can make those deals. We can negotiate and we can compromise. The other thing we can do, too, is we can act as a brake to prevent him from doing something absurdly crazy. Now, I wanted to come into this fully, but Republicans under Obama did not do this. They went with the other option, which I'm going to talk about, which is fight and fight and fight and oppose and oppose and oppose and don't work with him and obstruct as much as possible. I'm not a big fan of this, But we'll talk about that in the future. But I bring this up now because Republicans did that. They said, we're not going to work with you. We're gonna fight you on everything. We're going to obstruct you on everything. And it didn't work at first. And because they weren't working with President Obama and the Democrats were able to just overwhelm them and be like, well, we're just doing whatever it is that we want since you're not going to work with us. And then Obamacare came out from that. And, Republicans will look at that and be like, oh my God, this is the disaster. Well, we as Democrats are obviously going to be like, well, Obamacare was a good thing. We should also acknowledge that Republicans don't view it that way. They view it as a disaster. But when I say we should work with the new president, I say it because if we don't work with him, he could just overwhelm us and just be like, well, I'm going to do whatever I want. And then we'll get the Republican equivalent of Obamacare, something that, like, Obamacare was the worst thing ever to Republicans. We'll get the worst thing ever to us. I'm not sure exactly what that could be, but that's what we'll end up with if we don't work with him. So we want to work with him to prevent a worst case catastrophic scenario. And we also want to work with him so that we can try to keep some of our gains on some of our things. And that's why we would want to work with him, and that's why that's one of our options. Now, our other options is what the Republicans did to President Obama, which is oppose him and fight him on every single thing. Now, if you ask a Republican, they're going to obviously say, well, that was the correct choice because everything Obama did was terrible. Let's ignore that for the moment because that's silly. Everybody who loses the election thinks that the other side is doing the worst thing ever. I think in the past there was some more general acceptance that you were like, that the two parties were kind of like, well, he's not doing it the way I think it should be done, but I acknowledge the fact that he thinks he's doing what's in his best interests for the country. Whereas now we're kind of entered a state where a lot of people think that the other side is actively trying to dismember the country, which is a little unfortunate. I spend a lot of my time reading the news on Yahoo News app, and you can see the comments of other people. And a lot of, again, and I know comments aren't really representative of what people actually think because, internet anonymity and stuff like that. But, from reading the comments, you kind of get this idea that a whole bunch of people think that, President Obama was, people specifically say this, actually, that he's, a Muslim conspirator that's trying to destroy the country kind of situation. There's no acknowledgement that it's just a difference of ideals. Some people might think red's a better color, other people might think blue's a better color. Some people prefer to vacation in the mountains, some people prefer to vacation at the beach. While I don't necessarily like the mountains and I like the beach more, I acknowledge the fact that you might like the mountains more and that you have reasons for that. Some people are cat people, other people are dog people. I'm kind of well, I guess that was a bad example, I guess. An example that I'm clearly on one side or the other of. I like cold weather much more than I like hot weather. So if somebody was like, oh man, I just want to live in the tropics, I'm like, that's crazy. I can't understand why anybody would ever want that. But I can understand that there are reasons why you would want that. I just don't agree with those reasons. If you were like, oh man, I want to live in the tropics, I wouldn't be like, well, obviously you're a demon. You are just the devil and deserve to be killed. Which is unfortunate, because that's kind of where American politics has moved to now. But anyway. So like I said, our second option is to fight. To resist and not allow anything to go through and to obstruct. Again, I need to mention, though, that this didn't work at first for the Republicans, and it let Obamacare go through. It's also what I would say is, objectively the wrong choice. Even if it works, and it did ultimately work for Republicans, I don't think it's like a scorched earth policy. It's a Pyrrhic victory if you do win with it. yeah, you might win short term, but you're overall like wrecking the country, and it's worse for the country and everybody involved when you try it. And it's almost even worse when you try it, it succeeds. So the Republicans have effectively defeated Obama. They defeated Hillary Clinton, and now they have their president. But now we're going into their presidency in a very volatile and bad situation, which I think is like a concern. But anyway, so like I said, that is one of our options. We can fight and we can obstruct. Now, I personally think we should work with him. I say this because, again, I think the endless obstruction is bad for the country in the short term. I think it's bad for the country in the long term. I think it sets a sick and like gross precedent for us to continue trying. I think it's just like a morally corrupt thing to do in the first place. So I think it's just wrong. I think it doesn't serve the country's best interest. I don't even think it really serves the Democratic Party's best interest. On the other hand, though, I totally, completely understand the visceral want to do it. For 8 years, Republicans fought Obama on everything. And while we would have preferred to have won the election, there's almost a kind of a sick justice that we feel, like, because now we can be like, and now we're going to do the same thing to you. Enjoy 4 years, at least, of us just being a giant thorn in your side. We're not going to let you do anything. Even, like, mundane, simple things that we should let you do, we're going to fight you on. So there's like a sick pleasure to that, and I get that. I really do. And like, part of me wants to do it. Part of me, it's that desire to say, like, I told you so. You shouldn't do it, but you really, really, really want to. And I get that, but I still think it's not the correct choice. We need to work with them. We need to work with them so that we can protect the things that need to be protected as much as possible. We need to work with him because it will prevent a disaster of happening, or at least it will reduce the odds of a disaster happening. We need to do it because it's just the correct thing to do. We need to do it because it shows that we're the mature, the responsible ones. And also because if we do it and it works, then yeah, we might have 4 or 8 years of a Donald Trump presidency. But maybe things will normalize after that. Because the last 8 years were not good. We do not want that to ever happen again. So, even if we have to deal with Donald Trump as the president for 4 or 8 years, and even if it's as bad as we seem to think it's going to be, hopefully it'll normalize the situation. So that after Donald Trump, at least we can avoid this sick, disgusting situation we find ourselves in. That's what I hope. Okay, so now I said that. Now, to Republicans. You guys are looking at us in kind of the same way right now. You're seeing us with 2 options. 1, you can work with us, or 2, you can ignore us and just do whatever you want. And I see a lot of people being like, we don't need the Democrats. They can leave the country. They're traitors kind of behavior. I think, though, generally speaking, most people that aren't crazy and terrible acknowledge the fact that, you can't just kill all of the Democrats or kick us out of the country. That would actually not be good for the country, and, a lot of things like that. I think most people kind of understand that, right? Okay. You should want us to work with you, because the alternative to us working with you is us opposing you. And I can tell you that the 8 years of that happening to President Obama were not fun. Nobody enjoyed it. And President Obama didn't like it, and neither did Democrats in Congress or the Senate. So you don't want us to do that. You want us to work with you. Trust me on that. You guys didn't experience the 8 years of having every single thing you do be thwarted. You spent the 8 years doing that instead. But you don't want that to happen to you, because it wasn't fun. It wasn't a good process. Trust me. You definitely don't want that to happen if you can avoid it. And that means you want us to work with you. And you know what? Let me talk a little bit history real quick. All right, you guys opposed President Obama, and for the first 2 years, you were largely unsuccessful. But besides just the opposition to President Obama, you were also working on drumming up popular support for your stances and stuff like that. So while your defense against Obama didn't really pan out well for those first 2 years, the second part of, basically recruiting additional soldiers, if you will, worked well. So in the midterm elections in 2010 is when the Tea Party movement came in, and you swept to a crushing victory in the Senate and into the House. And you basically, at that point, set the stage for the 6 years of crap that came afterwards. By the way, I'm not knocking you on this. I'm being good job, guys. That was a very skilled political play. I can acknowledge my opponent when they have owned me, and you owned me. We got schooled. So yeah, you did a great job there. And following that, you were then able to actually throw a wrench into every single thing we did, and it was just utter crap for us from that point on. So right now, you might think, I can steamroll the Democrats. It'll be easy. We'll steamroll them. We'll just ignore them. But it's quite possible that in the midterm election, you'll get hammered. You don't want to risk that. You don't want to risk that unless you have to. And I can tell you, you might have to. I mean, you might not be able to get Democrats on board, and even if you do manage to get Democrats on board, you might find us annoying enough that you want to just say, screw it, we're just going to ignore them. That might happen. But you want to at least attempt to avoid that situation. So that means you want us on board. Democrats, we probably want to be on board. We do not want to have to fight. But we might have to. Now, here's what I'll say before I kind of finish things up at this point. Republicans, you guys won. Now that you've won, it's kind of it's your job to now come to us and be like, look, it was a hard-fought battle, but let's put it behind us. It's your job to come to us and say that. It's not our job to come to you and surrender and bow down. Now, I want to say something else too. I was up at my parents' house for Christmas, and both my mom and my dad were both strong Donald Trump supporters. Nothing wrong with that. However, talking to both of them had this weird feel to it. Okay, and I understand that you guys are happy that you won, and I don't want to overgeneralize and say that everybody is like my parents. However, I have seen personally and on social media and stuff like that, a lot of people that are like my parents like this. When you win, whether or not it's the election or a game or a sporting event or whatever, it's perfectly normal to be happy that you won. And depending on the stakes that you want, that were there, you can be extremely, overwhelmingly happy. I understand that. But what I got from my stepdad, for instance, was less, yes, we've won, I'm super, super happy that we've won, and more, yes, you've lost, I'm super, super happy that you lost. So it was less a celebration of victory and more of a celebration of Democrats crushing defeat. And I mention this because, for instance, his mom, I guess it would be my step-grandmom, she's a Democrat. And she's a Democrat in the, emotional, I want everybody to be happy kind of way, for instance. She doesn't really know the high-end, economic stuff and things like that. But what she wants is, she's a very empathetic person. She just wants everybody to be happy. She doesn't want people to be sad. So when she hears a story of a person who's I couldn't afford medical treatment because I didn't have insurance, she feels sad for that person and wants that person to have medical insurance. When she hears, a gay couple go, we weren't allowed to marry and we weren't allowed to get, all the things, she feels bad for that person because they're having a hard time. Her support for democratic policies isn't so much like ideological, in the sense that it's instead based off of whatever kind of makes her feel good. So she, after Donald Trump won, was very emotional because she just saw all the things, all these people that are going to be sad. And seeing how she was so emotional, my stepdad, her son, could not resist being like, "Booyah! In your face! 8 years of Obama, and we're gonna undo everything he did! We're gonna crush you! Gays are gonna be out of this country! No more abortion!" You think the minimum wage is going up? No way! Now, while all that could be stuff that he actually believes and thinks, there's still no reason to say it to his mom like that. So, during Thanksgiving dinner, for instance, while I was also up there, he berated her so much that she went home early crying. Alright? Now, I would imagine that most people probably didn't quite go that far to their own mom, but it still kind of comes down to that thing where it's not so much like, yes, Donald Trump won, and it's like, yes, Hillary Clinton lost. Which probably stems from the fact that both candidates were so shockingly unpopular. Still, though. So, like, the Donald Trump supporters and the Republicans are kind of struggling with an issue of being, like, good winners, good sports about the fact that they won, and not, like, ruthlessly rubbing it in our faces. Now, to be fair, and I say this with all honesty, if Hillary Clinton had won, I would have done the exact same thing. I understand that. I totally would have done it. I would have been in my parents' face, in my mom's face, being like, "Oh, you lost!" But I would also do that knowing that I wasn't trying to get my mom and my stepdad on board with anything. I knew that because they had spent the last 8 years blindly opposing everything that President Obama had done, that they were going to spend the next 4 years doing the exact same thing to Hillary Clinton. There was no need for me to be civil to them and try to, like, work with them. In fact, I wanted the whole process to be as terrible for them as possible so they would hopefully not do the same thing in the future. So, I mean, like, specifically going, I would be a giant jerk because I knew that they weren't ever going to work with us. If I thought there was a chance that they would work with us and that was a goal I was striving towards, I would not have been a giant jerk. See where I'm going with this? Okay, so Republicans, if you want Democrats to work with you and not to oppose you, you should probably temper your response to some things a little bit. I know we're still in, like, the honeymoon phase, I say, where, like, you're still just super excited about the whole situation, and I do understand that. Hopefully when he actually gets in the office on the 20th, that will, that situation will reverse itself, and you guys will calm down a little bit. So I'm giving you guys the benefit of the doubt. However, it's, the election was in November. We've had all of November, and we've had all of December, and it's not going away. It's still there. It's very hard to see how a lot of people are responding and reacting and be like, oh man, I can't wait to work with those people. Now, I also understand too, and don't get me wrong, I understand that it's a highly unfortunate situation just in life in general, where a vocal minority can unfortunately sort of set themselves up to be the spokesman for a whole group. And I also understand that, the vocal minority is usually very, very passionate, but they also have a tendency to be a little bit crazy. So I understand that it just so happens that the particularly, like, awful and crazy wing of the party is just the one that happens to be the loudest, and that's the one that most people hear. I know that the vast majority of Republicans are not terrible people. I know that the vast majority of Donald Trump supporters aren't terrible people. It's just unfortunate that the ones that are crazy and happen to be terrible people are the ones that have set themselves up to be the spokesman. I do understand that. On the other hand, though, when I have a friend and we both go out and he starts yelling, racial slurs or something, and I just stand there beside him quietly and don't say anything, it makes me look complicit to what he's saying. So, while I understand that the majority of Republicans and the vast majority of them, 99.9% of them, aren't terrible people. They care about the country. It's just a difference of opinions on what's most important and stuff like that. It's just unfortunate that the crazies are the loudest ones, but you guys need to... You don't need to, because you don't need our help. But if you want our help, and if you want us to work with you, you should probably consider trying to get those other ones to temper their responses, and maybe speak out about the crazies every now and then. I supported President Obama. I voted for him over Mitt Romney, for instance. But I can still speak out and be I don't like some of the things that President Obama does. Nothing about me liking President Obama more than Mitt Romney made me guarantee that I would always defend him and be on board with everything he does. I can be look, he's an okay president. He's not the greatest president in the world. I thought he did a really good job with taking care of Pakistan and stuff like that, getting us reducing our presence in Afghanistan and whatnot. But he kind of dropped the ball with ISIS. I can say that. Republicans, you can say that about Donald Trump. You can go, well, I like most of the things he does, but, he should probably get off Twitter. You guys don't have to be 100% behind the man. Even if you are 100% behind the man, you could possibly be a little bit more civil about it. And again, you don't need to, because you don't need us. We need you, essentially. And, if you'd rather fight us than work with us, then that's certainly an option. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic sense. You can, that's a viable option. Anyway, though, the thing is that I'm trying to get at here is just that you guys should probably try to temper the response a little bit. Maybe try to get some of those crazy ones to shut up, tone their thing down a little bit. Because otherwise the alternative is we're going to have to fight you. And that's not going to be good for anybody. I don't want to fight you. I want to work with you. I really do. Alright, folks, that's it for me. Inauguration is in 10 days. We'll see how things go by then. But for now, people, as always, favorite, comment, subscribe, check me out on Patreon, Twitter. Flame me in the comments, and if you have an opinion, I always respond to anybody that comments on my political videos, as long as what you say is intelligible. But yeah, I'm done now. Have a good night, guys.